So as a lot of you know, I've been spending a lot of time trying to reorganize the shop, make it work for me a little bit more. One of the biggest things I haven't really addressed yet is that my thickness planer, which you saw in the cutting board video, doesn't have anywhere to go right now. I keep it on the floor, on the corner of my workbench, bring it up to the workbench, but it weighs 45 pounds. It's not easy to move around, doesn't really have convenient handles or anything. And I do have a spot over here next to my belt sander, but the belt sander stand doesn't really allow for it. So I think I'm going to design and implement a flip-top cart. Essentially, it's going to be a cart that has one top with an axle through the center of it that can rotate around so that I can access either tool as I need them. It's rare that I need them simultaneously, so it should be a good solution for the problem, and we're going to see if it works. This piece of plywood happens to be exactly the right width already, which is really handy, so gotta love that. Now I gotta make it into two slightly smaller pieces. I'm using a 1/2-inch plywood for this, which I'm fairly sure will be strong enough, and if not, I can always strengthen it later. Just to help frame this up a bit, bottom, two sides, there'll be a hole through the center of the top of each side with a tube or steel rod or something running through the middle, and that serves as the pivot point for everything. And then there'll be essentially a tabletop built around that tube, so that can then flip and pivot as well. I have to see what tube I have and how I'm going to build this top, because I only have a sort of an idea. This is me testing to make sure the planer will actually fit on the footprint I have prescribed. It is very close, but fortunately whoever engineered this was kind and made sure that the end of the dust collection shroud here lines up with the side of this, because if this had stuck out further, I would have had to cut it or rethink this design, which I didn't want to do at all. So, let's find an axle. So this is what I came up with out of the scrap collection. We don't have a ton of metal tubing laying around. This is about a 1-inch diameter steel tube, probably about a 1/16 to 1/8 inch wall diameter or wall width there. I think it'll work, and if not, what I can do is cut a piece of wood to go on the inside of it to give it a little more rigidity. But it's pretty strong all on its lonesome. It just has to carry a lot of weight and be able to rotate smoothly, so some considerations to be made. But I'm going to build around this for now, and then if I decide I need to later, I can always add in more reinforcement. So, while you're watching me making these cuts on the bandsaw, I just realized I don't have any footage of me constructing the tabletop. It's a pretty simple construction of 2x4s sandwiched between the spare plywood from the sides, and then a lot of screws kind of everywhere holding it together. I drilled some holes through the center of each of the cross pieces to accept the tube. So I'm slightly abandoning my plan to use these notched ends on these. I think I could make it work if I used them a lot wider, but as they are, they're just not strong enough, and I don't really want to increase the profile of this that much. So instead, I'm going to have the plywood do the bulk of the work. I've already marked out notches on the sides that I'm going to just slide these slats into, and they won't have this adjoining notch here. This wasn't going to add a lot of structural support anyway. It was mostly just to prevent the slat from slipping too much, but hopefully the internal corner will do that fine. And if that doesn't end up working, I'll try something else again. Okay, time to dry fit the whole thing one more time. See where that gets us. I do think I am going to need a little bit more support on the sides. Just because this plywood is not great. Now let's go ahead and try these. That was the one concern I had with the tabletop so tight. It is catching on the sides of the notches a little bit. I think I'll file those down just to make sure there's nothing too on. And I think I am gonna trim down that edge of the tabletop just a bit. Alright, I took the time to fix up those edges like I said. Let's see if that helped at all. Spin's a little easier too. I don't want to quite do the sit test yet. It probably could take my weight, which is somewhere between 100 and 200 pounds, we'll leave it at that. But until there's actual hardware holding it together, I'm gonna hold off on pushing my luck there. Yeah, so that amount of racking, or that side to side kind of wiggle it's got, is a fairly predictable outcome here. On other designs of this that I've seen, they do a second shelf 3 or 4 inches off the bottom, but unfortunately I didn't have that kind of room to play with since the joiner, or sorry, the planer is already just barely going to fit in here. In fact, I'm crossing my fingers that it still fits at all. I think it will. So, in my usual style, I decided that what I was trying to do, which was the smart thing, was boring and I didn't want to do it. So, I decided instead it would be better if I mounted the planer, to see if it would take the weight, and compression-wise it seems to be. Again, the racking's an issue. But this'll, if I can mount this, it'll also let me see how much clearance I have down here, because maybe I can put another cross piece down at the bottom, which will help a lot. The problem I'm running into now is I have no idea where the mounting points on this planer are. Temporarily taking the dust shroud off just so I can see better. That's what the inside of the planer looks like. It's a big, round, scary, rotating knife of death. For the record, it is unplugged. It's nowhere near electricity. Well, I found the mounting points, I'm pretty sure. Unfortunately, they are in the most awkward position they could possibly be in. They're essentially as deep within the mechanism of this as it can be. I'll turn this around real quick. And good golly, is this heavy. It's essentially a solid chunk of cast iron with a big motor in it. So, mounting point here, here, and on the opposite side. That's of course about 3 inches inside the bed of the planer. So how I'm exactly supposed to do that conveniently, I have no idea. I know on their newer models they have mounting points right on there's a little bit right here that you can mount from. It's gonna be tricky, but I think I can make it work. In order to have it go into actual wood and not just the plywood, I'm gonna put another couple of bracers, just scrap blocks from these cuts right in there, but that should do it. So, it is now the next day. I've come back, I've got some new plans on ways that I can improve this thing. You see the wobble is still there. Obviously that's not gonna fly in the long run. I do have some minor changes that will help, but I do still want to get the planer mounted up first so I know how much clearance I have on the bottom, because if I have enough down here, if you can see my hands, they're waving down in the bottom of the cart, to add another shelf or any sort of cross piece, that'll help reduce the travel that has, which will help a little bit. And then I have a couple other plans too. So that is where I'm going to start. Now the planer, the mounting holes I've measured out are essentially in a rectangle at the four corners, 17 inches wide, 4.5 inches deep, tall, I don't know. And so that will be how I measure this out. So now I'm going to do some math, which is and then I'm going to mark that out on the piece of plywood that will get mounted onto this, and then drill those holes, use that as a template, assuming it fits, and then attach everything together through that. And hopefully that'll work. And if not, I'll be very sad. But it has to be able to hold a lot of weight, so I gotta make sure I do a good job here. Now I know what you're thinking, Jeff, why are you using a calculator from the late 80s when you have a perfectly good phone? You're the phone. That's what's filming you. Or me, so you can watch. So having a backup like this is fairly handy. What I'm starting to realize is this is going to be very annoying no matter what I do. So after some consideration and digging through my various bolt piles, I think I'm going to go with these guys. They should be long enough. I am going to need to countersink them pretty significantly into the plywood, but that should be okay because I put in those blocks from before. So the thing I did there that was tremendously stupid was I didn't clamp these guys down. Now, the holes are all out of alignment. But what I can do, these two are still fine, so I can run the bolts through those and use those as a sort of clamp. That should hopefully work. So now I'm going to take advantage of this being a flip-top table, flip it over. So now when I flip this over, if the gods are with me, I'll have 4 mounting points exactly where they're supposed to be. Alright. I'd like to point out that despite the wobble, this thing is holding the considerable weight of this guy without much complaint. I'm also realizing now that I think I can take these end panels off pretty easily, so I'm going to do that. Look at all that wood chips. Well, I wish I'd known about this before I did all this, because now I have a clean shot at the mounting holes. You live, you learn. That's what we're all about. Speaking of videography, I just got the new SD card, which was the last thing I was waiting on, so I can actually start using my GoPro for this stuff, which will be great because A, I like having my phone accessible, and B, it's a somewhat more proper camera for these purposes, much better lens. Improvement for all parties involved. Off camera, I went ahead and cut out the shelving pieces for the bottom edge after I realized I had a little bit more space than I originally thought underneath the planer when it was flipped over, and it helped a bit. So it's still not perfect, as you can see. Obviously there's still quite a bit of that side-to-side movement. And I'm trying to think if there's a way I can use the center of the tube as a way of actually bringing the tops of the two together, just because the plywood has a tendency to move a little bit up there. And this piece is a little bit bowed in general, which isn't helping. So I'm wondering if I were to run a threaded rod all the way through and have a cap on both ends that I could then tighten a bolt on that rod, if that would do anything. And I think there's something there, but I haven't quite figured out the way to do it yet. Okay, I think I just figured it out. I gotta see if I have any threaded rod lying around. Give me a sec. So my new cockamamie scheme is to use this piece of threaded rod and some end caps on these bits of pipe to essentially make the entire top into a clamp, which will have a number of effects. A, it'll make the tabletop stronger and a little bit more of a supportive material, hopefully preventing a lot of that side-to-side movement, although I do have other plans for that too, stay tuned. And it'll just stiffen the whole thing up a bit, which is good. Plus I needed to make end caps for this anyway, so I see this as an absolute win. So what I want to do is cut this down so it's about 3/8 of an inch off the side, on both sides. So what I'm going to do now is use the same bit that I used to drill the holes for all the other things, just to make a shallow recess in this that'll sort of accept the end of the tube. Part 2 is I'm now going to drill a hole big enough to accept that piece of threaded rod through the center of those holes. Alright, so it's tough to get it all in one shot, but I do have nuts and washers on both sides of the pipe now. And this thing is just kicking my butt, so I'm going to take it another day. I would rather do it slow and get it something approaching right. And I know right now this thing does not look very good. There's lots of uneven edges. It's probably something close to square, but it doesn't look like it. But I want it to work more than anything, and so I'm going to take my time with it and make sure I do it right each day, and don't let myself get frustrated over the small details that I can go and fix later. So now that I've got the planer put back together, I am going to cut a couple pieces of thicker plywood to act sort of as spines up the middle, probably about this wide, and hopefully that will be the last touch this needs just to be 100% solid. So I made this little apron essentially out of, I believe this is 3/4 inch MDF. I have one on the other side. I'm going to screw them all in together now, hopefully that will do the job. It's better. It's still not perfect. Let's get the other side on. It's gonna look exactly the same, so I won't make you watch it twice. Alright, so I have the aprons installed on both sides. I have a whole mess of screws everywhere. I've reinforced a couple of other points that I thought were weak. And while there is still just a little bit of wobble, and that's me putting some pretty serious power into it, I think it is at a point where I am content that it's not going to fall apart on me. It is going to be fine. So, and I think, you know, most of the force that I'm generating, especially on the planer, is going to be perpendicular to that axis, so we should be fine. So now it is time to mount the sander, I think. You might be wondering about wheels. I was thinking about building my own, and that's still an option available to me, but I think I'm going to be better off ordering casters and just waiting, and in the meantime just putting this somewhere where it'll be out of the way enough that I can still use it. Maybe next to my bandsaw for now. It'll make my opening into the shop area a little bit smaller, but it'll do. It's the handle that I forgot to flip. I know you're hearing a lot of kind of terrifying cracking noises. That's all just the edges of the plywood that I haven't cleaned up yet. The sander should be a much easier situation to mount than the planer, just because it actually has mounting points in accessible locations. The one thing I'm going to do is set this back just a little bit, because I don't want the mounting points to go right into the rod. I'm just going to use some lag bolts on this side. The sander's not nearly as heavy as the planer, and I know I'm going into solid wood too, so. I know these are in at a bit of an angle, but that's actually by design. It'll lessen the, A, it's easier to drill in, and B, it'll lessen the amount of shear stress on the supporting materials if they're not coming straight out, but rather have to go at competing geometry. I'm pretty good with that. That is gonna pretty much be the finishing touch for now. I will make a separate video whenever I add wheels, because I don't know how long it's gonna be until I get those, and I want to get this up. So in the meantime, I'm gonna back you up and show you the full thing in action. Yeah, I'll have to figure something out for that cord. Because the balance isn't 100% perfect, these are a little bit awkward, so I may make those slots just a touch bigger to make it easier. And there's going to be a lot of trimming work I do on this. I'm going to try to flush up these sides so they're not all over the place. Figure something out with the cords. Just get it all a little bit nicer. But you get the idea of how I put it together. Whenever I do get around to wheels, I'll probably just get 4 locking casters or door dropping casters that I can put down that are sturdy enough. But yeah, this is a cart that can flip and make my shop a little bit more organized, which I am always in favor of. So if you like this video, go ahead and subscribe, like, comment, tell me what you'd like to see me do next. I have a whole bunch of things in the pipeline, so I really hope you guys are able to stick around and see them. Thank you to those of you who have already subscribed. It means a lot to me. I'm trying to build this slowly and steadily. I'm not going to make it my full-time job, but I would like it to be something that I can be proud of. So I'm going to keep working to improve my videography, my editing, my actual carpentry skills, and we'll go from there. Stick around for the next one, and we'll make some more stuff. Have a good one.